Hello everyone, welcome. Don't forget to subscribe. Today I'm going to deal with some of your comments, especially those on irony, because I have received many interesting comments and I'm going to deal with them. Let me go back to them here so I can read them. Okay. We have, from Mark Fisher, 3626. Thank you very much for your comments. I do appreciate them, actually. They're very enlightening, they're intelligent, and I do appreciate them. Okay, you say this. This is about the book, The Two Ivans. You remember the last two videos are on them. And you say, we have many American authors who had a great gift of irony. This is in reply, I see what you're saying. This is in reply to a comment I made while I was talking about the books. I was reading the first two petitions of our two heroes, the two Ivans. And I was using an English translation. And then for the third petition, I changed the book and I said, I'm going to now move on to the American translation because they do a better job. The translator does a better job here. And I explained that, well, I said that for the previous two, the English translation, in my opinion, was better because it had captured the sense of irony that the author was displaying here. And nevertheless, for the third petition, because it was much more factual, the American translation was better. And this is your reply. You know, you're saying, what do you mean? Americans do have a sense of irony. We have many American authors who had a great gift of irony. O. Henry comes to mind, Mark Twain, Ambrose Bierce, Edgar Allan Poe, Rod Sterling, even Jack London. Read O. Henry's story, The Gift of the Magi, or Jack London's story, To Build a Fire. And you continue, I really enjoyed your reading of this story. I listened to both parts. Thank you. This is the first time I've been read a bedtime story since I was 5 years old. All right, I do enjoy your postings very much, even though I don't share your views about politics or life in general. Okay, I subscribed as soon as I heard your first one. By the way, I really enjoy hearing you laugh about it. I would use the word absurdity rather than irony, but it was very funny and you read it very well. Thank you. Thank you, Mark Fisher. And then you sent another one. Upon reflection, IMO, I don't know what that means. This story, while very funny and entertaining, is not an example of irony. It's rather an example of absurdity. The story I cited below, The Gift of the Magi, is irony. What do you think? Okay, let me go back here now. Okay. Yes, I agree, but this is yes and no. This is what I think. The situation itself was absurd. But the way the author deals with that absurdity is ironic. And I'm going to explain now what I mean by Russian irony vis-a-vis English irony or even American irony. The situation is absurd. In other words, you have two gentlemen here arguing over a pig and a rifle and so on. Moreover, you have them when there is a pause because one of them says, okay, I won't ask you again, I won't talk about it again, and then he changes the conversation and he says, oh, by the way, did you hear that the Turks have initiated a war against our Tsar? No, really, why? Well, I don't know. Well, what could it be? Well, perhaps they want to, he says, perhaps they want to convert us to the Turkish faith. Absolutely not. No. And they go on. And one of them said that is why the Tsar is probably going against to war against them too. He's going to tell them, no, you convert to our holy Christian faith, and so on. Okay, that is absurd, yeah, but the author is using absurdity through irony to tell to expose that absurdity to the reader. Okay, let me see if I can explain this better. In the American translation, for example, the translator describes one of the Ivans as this self-styled gentleman. In the English translation, he says, this Ivans who calls himself a gentleman. And the whole passage, I believe that the irony with which the author is writing comes alive much more. I could give you many examples through the English translation. However, in the third petition, when he has to expose 1, 2, 3, the pig came into the room and he took the petition away, and so on. The American translation is better. That is what I meant. Let me explain about irony a little bit. I think I had told you about this before. I don't remember, months ago. I don't remember what I was talking about, but a gentleman from Romania who I was teaching his sons, preparing them for university, and one day we got talking and he was telling me a little bit about his life. He came from Romania. He had emigrated first to France, and he was a medical doctor, and he didn't like it there for whatever reason, and he came to England, and he was doing very well here and very happy. And he told me a story that in France, while in France, he went one day to the post office, and the lady behind the counter said, "So where do you come from?" And he said, "From Romania." And the lady behind the counter said, "And when are you leaving?" That, to me, is not irony. Let me explain. To that question is more sarcasm. To that question, if you didn't get the sarcasm, you could say, "Oh, I'm not leaving," or something like that. If you did get the sarcasm with which the question was asked, you could have said, "I am not leaving, I'm staying here," something like that, throwing it back to the lady behind the counter. But if you were to use irony, it would be something like this. "So where are you from?" "I'm from Romania." "And you are adapting well?" That is irony. If you didn't get it, you would say, "Yes, I'm adapting very well, thank you very much." Failing to see the irony in the word adapting. don't know whether this is the best example, but it's the best one I can think of right now. Every country, like every individual, has its own talents, and we know that American talent is forthrightness. Okay, don't dance around with just saying 1, 2, 3. That is very American. The English, their irony is a little bit, it's more intellectual. I'm going to put down below the links to 2 sketches. I have done this before, but I'm going to do it again because they are examples of what I mean by sarcasm and irony. Everyone in England knows these 2 sketches. They are part of a classical English comedy. They were one from 1966 and another one from 1964. Everyone in England knows them, and perhaps many of my listeners do too. But just in case, I'm going to put the link down below. The first one, Sarcasm, is the very famous sketch. It's just 2-3 minutes sketch with John Cleese and another 2 very famous comedians here about social class, the upper class, the middle class, and the working class. And they are talking about, oh, I admire you. You have to watch them. That to me is sarcasm. Irony, which the English are very good at, an intellectual irony, is the sketch from 1964 with Peter Cook and Dudley Moore about Tarzan. Yes. So what you see is Dudley Moore comes into the sketch. Again, it's about 3 minutes. And he's depicting a man with one leg, and he's jumping on one leg, hopping. And here is the irony, just in one question. Peter Cook says to him, "Now, Mr. So-and-so, you are auditioning, are you not, for the part of Tarzan?" Okay, you'll have to watch it. In other words, it's a kind of I can only describe it as irony, but intellectual irony. Now, difference with Russian irony, or the way I feel, this is all my opinion, by the way, obviously, okay? I am not pontificating about my holding the truth or anything else like that, but it's my conclusion, which is not the premise of my argument, but the conclusion of it. In other words, I have thought about it and I have reached this opinion, and I have to call it obviously opinion because that is what it is. It's not an empirical fact, proven or provable. But it is not the premise of my argument, but the conclusion of it. Russian authors, I find, use irony, but in a different way. They are not looking down on the peasant or on the illiterate. The situation is absurd, yes, 2 gentlemen fighting over a pig, but it is an affectionate look at it. It's irony, not intellectual, looking down, but it's an irony with a kind smile. They don't put them down. Look, this is what I mean. The Russian sense of humor. There is a famous saying now that everyone is quoting. I actually heard an American senator saying it totally out of context and without any sense of irony is the usual thing. I first heard it from one of my Russian students, and it's about this guy in the assembly line during the Soviet times, and someone comes in to, I don't know whether it was a politician or whoever, meet and greet the people, and he says, well, do you enjoy your work? And the Russian workman said straight out, well, they pretend to pay me and I pretend to work. Another example, this is also said, I have heard it and read it in different contexts, but it originally came from Spain, from a writer that is a very famous writer, contemporary. He's a member of the Royal Academy of Language in Spain, and he wrote an article about something or other. And he gave the example of a peasant in Galicia, northwestern Spain, where I come from, peasant country, traditionally. And he was saying that he went into a tavern and he wanted to talk to the people there, just ordinary people, peasants with their beret on and so on. And just to hear them talk, he said to one of them, so what do you think about politics today and our politicians? And the guy replied, an old guy, an old-timer, politicians, he said, they piss on you and tell you it's raining. You might have heard it, but he came originally from there. Now, Russian authors, I find, respect these unlearned, illiterate, perhaps, people, because they realize that they may not have read anything, they can't talk to you about any theory and so on, but they have this experience of having lived life, suffering, and their experience of life has taught them a lot, and they feel that they have something to teach us, the learned ones. They have, I think, a profound respect for that learning that comes from the experience of life. Even if they can't articulate it very well, they articulate it, with one sentence. Actually, Gorky, another Russian writer, again, late 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, I believed he was... Yes, he was still alive during the Russian Revolution. And he said, perhaps exaggerating a little bit, or perhaps a lot, but he said, there is nothing that I have ever read in philosophy books that I haven't heard in one way or another said by an illiterate peasant. Well, obviously that is an exaggeration, but in other words, they don't have this attitude of the deplorables out there who don't know anything. They instinctively feel that those people who don't know anything know through the experience of life. And so their sense of irony, when they portray an absurd situation, it's always, as I said, with a kind smile. They do not put them down. They bring them up, as it were. I don't know that answers the question. So to recap, I find that the English sense of irony is more intellectual. The Russian sense of irony is more effective, more affectionate. Anyway, I don't know whether I have answered you, but let me now go back, if I may, to other messages here, to other comments. Let me see, just bear with me for 1 second, because I'm going to try to find them here. Because I do appreciate them. Let me find them. Let me see, how far can I go? Okay. Here is one. This is in response to a video that I made on the abuse of power, moral decadence, sexual depravity, the empire's decline. And this comes from Bella Crinkle 9381. And you say, Interpreting Tradition, fascinating. You've made me think. Thank you. I have a request for you. Have you thought about the sexual revolution that introduced free love? Could the out-of-bounds sexuality that began when females finally, in capital letters, were brought or allowed into modern times, a reaction to being repressed for centuries, capital letters, meaning intellectually, emotionally, and sexually, women going wild? Lol, it was fun, yet it needs to be questioned, because now it seems to be overdone, since there is no balance between the sexes, and women are still considered the lesser of the two sexes. Plus the never-ending supply of very young women with uncontrollable, quotes, raging baby hormones keeps men from emotionally maturing, driving more mature women away from these boy children, while at the same time many young women are given the excuse to be taken care of by their new daddy. These ironic circumstances thus do not give way to an emotionally sane society. Does anyone want to grow up, or is it that men cling to power and control while not capable of allowing equality between men and women? I don't think that free love is doing anyone any good. It's only the easy way out of difficult circumstances for both sexes. Well, you're mixing a lot of things here. This thing about the young women with their uncontrollable raging baby hormones, that made me think about something, and that is that women, I think it's a mistake to think that young girls have these raging hormones as boys do, as young men do. It's a misunderstanding, I believe, of women's sexuality. Yes, the male in their teenage years and further experience these, what you say, raging hormones. But women experience this in a different way. We have the menstruating cycle is actually a rite of passage, as it were, for us. It tells us that there is a difference now. Look, the boys may, when they see a young, beautiful girl, will have these raging hormones. But I think it's a mistake to think that women react in the same way, in exactly the same way as men do. Women don't have, there is a boy there. They react in a different way. Of course, they're going to be aware of boys and men, but it's not in that same way. Look, during the 1990s, you will recall that there was a very famous television series, Sex in the City, where you have these young women looking at men and reacting as if they are men. Oh, look at that. They want to go for that young, attractive man and so on. What is not known is that this is in the 1990s, this was written for gay men reacting to other men, but it was too risky, too dangerous. Now, so they put women where gay men would have been in the original script. Women do not, they don't want to, that is not it. We tend more to put it in 18th century terms. We actually drop the handkerchief for the male to pick it up. In other words, making him known that he took the initiative when in fact we knew all along that we have chosen you. What I'm saying is that yes, we are aware of the male, but we don't go about it the same way. So I disagree with these raging baby hormones. Anyway, let me move on. There's another one. A comment on the video. Oh, our lords and masters allow us to lick your boots, on authoritarianism and so on. What a fascinating book. I need to read it. I agree. Is the smartphone the smartphone is our color. Yet the technology brings much good. We can watch your videos. Thank you. They are mixed blessings, the technology. The trick is to make Christ and his Catholic Church our center and not the technology. If the technology assists us in the former, it may be used wisely. Enjoyed this video. God bless you and thank you. Thank you very much from Travis1365. Let's see a few more. Lance Hagen, as I so enjoy your videos. Thanks for your efforts. Thank you very much. Another one on reveries on Ireland, Poland and Spain. Thank you for your video. I am an Irishman and I do love my country, but I feel stranger in it now. We are occupied by sinister forces who are unable to transform the country through the complicity of homegrown traitors. We have a proud history. Patriots who gave their lives of all could hardly have imagined what was to become of the country they loved and gave their lives for. I can see the pain there. It seems to me the average Irish person does not care. What you said is true. They want to be modern, progressive, liked, accepted. They are ignorant of all history and so cannot fathom what is happening now. They are easily manipulated by the corrupt, dishonest and propaganda-driven mainstream media types. It is all very sad. However, God directs human history. He knows how much our ancestors defended the faith. Let us pray somehow, some way, the Irish can rediscover this Holy Roman Catholic faith and in so doing rescue the nation from the abyss which now threatens the entire world. God bless you. So beautifully written, and the pain is obvious. Travis1365, thank you very much for your comment. Hannah Davia 8791 reacting to reveries on Ireland, Poland and Spain. Wonderful. Have you read Roger Buck's book or seen his YouTube videos? He speaks often of Ireland and Belloc, the writer. I am finally reading his Cor Jesus Sacratissimum, and it is just wonderful. I haven't read it. I will. From Singh Raduga, this is about 10 days ago, commenting on the video Russians' acceptance of suffering versus our denial of it. And you say, the difference is easy to grasp. Russians say God suffered and told us to. Europeans and Americans say God suffered so that we don't. This is it. I disagree. Respectfully, Singh Raduga. The Russians say God suffered and told us to. Be careful of... I know that in a comment on a YouTube video, obviously you can't expand on that. But God didn't say, go and suffer. Told us to is not adequate. But certainly what is not, I don't agree, is Europeans and Americans say, God suffered so that we don't. That is, in my view, not correct, but that's only because I'm Catholic. Many, for example, Calvinists in the Protestant tradition would perhaps agree, although of course they would explain why they do agree, but they maintain that since Christ suffered in the cross, I hope I'm putting this properly, it's not my intention to misrepresent their faith. But what I understand is that they believe that God suffered, so now it goes to the excuse me, to the issue of predestination and so on. So now we can all take advantage of his suffering, as it were, and so he gets to those who have faith are saved because already Christ suffered for us. Whereas in the Catholic tradition is God suffered for us to give us a chance to now be safe. In other words, your conduct, not just your faith, but what you do with that faith that is going to affect your conduct. Otherwise, it's a dead faith, it's frozen. If it's going to affect your conduct, then you have a choice. Free will comes into being here. You can go this way or you can go that way. God made it possible for us, yes, but it doesn't mean that God suffered and then that's it. That's all you have to do. You know, all you have to do is smile. No, so complicated to, argue this on a YouTube video. And there's so much more to it. But you cannot just say that that is what Americans and Europeans believe. Okay, what more? Barry Shaw 5660, our country has been destroyed from within. These are a lot of the comments that thank you very much for this in-depth analysis. It was excellent. Let me move on to other videos. Hillybilly Hippie OG on the Russians' acceptance of suffering. You say it's scary to wake up to the truth. I woke up to the US shenanigans around 2004. It feels like becoming an instant orphan. Yeah, and the word orphan is, I think, is correct there. When you have put your trust on your mother or your father, and then they leave you behind, and you're there by yourself, and that trust has been broken, you are an orphan. Yes, will have to find your own way in life, as it were. Let me go on. From Reveries on Ireland, Poland and Spain, KG 3718, the Irish have lost their faith and the vacuum has been filled with woke liberalism. Corrupt leaders and the EU are destroying the culture. Once the cradle of Christianity, the few faithful remaining are suffering greatly. Ireland has been a test for the globalist agenda. If the farmers accept this, together with the people, is a death warrant. There is no climate emergency. There's a lot of videos on how abandoned people feel. Mark Fisher, do you know what ASMR is? Your postings are a perfect example of it. So soothing. Thank you. So peaceful, so compelling to listen to. Thank you. The sound creates a mental state almost like meditation. That's the closest I can come to describing it. And then you give me a link there to ASMR. Okay, I will look at it. Here is the trigger you have that elicits that response. Listening to a softly spoken or whispering voice. Because you don't intend it, it is called unintentional ASMR. It's a gift you give to your audience. As soon as I heard it, I became a subscriber yesterday. Thank you so much, Mark Fisher. Oh, you're the same Mark Fisher that I was answering, the irony thing. Okay, thank you so. I've never heard of ASMR. Okay, I will look it up, and you give me the link. So great. Josapolis 4564. Thank you. I did enjoy the story. Great. Thank you. Good. Mark Fisher, here you are again. 3626. Oh, I see. Okay. You say, until recently, with rare exceptions, the life of Russians going far back into history was extreme poverty, ruthless dictatorship, a climate that is brutally cold and snowy during most of the year, brutal repression from above, and periodic wars. In short, life was one of suffering with no chance of escape, in addition to other universal afflictions like illness. The escape was alcohol. However, in the last 25 years, a new phenomenon has come to exist in Russia, a generation of youths who have not known these hardships. Their tolerance for hardship and suffering is no better than their Western counterparts. Their expectations are high, and they are world-savvy. When confronted with what prior generations accepted passively, they protested, and when they failed to effect change, they fled the country. They recognized their government for the monstrosity it is, and want no part of it. So that is why you say that we don't agree in the politics. So you are right. I think it's to call their government a monstrosity is a monstrosity. But we can continue. Thank you for your comment anyway. We do disagree in politics, that's for sure. Elsa Bretagne, thank you for replying to my comment. Thank you for reading the story. I have never got to it myself. Great, okay. Peter R3CD, fascinating talk right in my field of consideration. This is about Chekhov's story about selling your soul to the devil. You say Marxism is affordable to the upper class, but not to the working class. The students want revolution, not the workers. A clever mousetrap of the mind elaborated since the 1840s by the generation of high priests like the Frankfurt School, which extrapolates from it 100 years later. All this is the banksters operating far from the public awareness. The public just suck it up and police each other with rhetorical ideology, logical fallacies, and control of the narrative, control with a K. Nobody escapes. Our measure as souls is how we deal with it, risking ostracism, punishment, through anonymous institutions. Yes, the Frankfurt School, the German political philosophers and so on, then in the 60s went to Berkeley, California, Marcuse, all those. And this latest one, I forget his name now. He's still alive. Oh gosh, never mind, I forgot his name, so I cannot make the argument. Deborah, hi. Such a funny story. The writing is so good. This is about Russian literature, a must for Western teens, about the two Ivans. Let me see. Deborah is a great follower. I thank you so much, and she gives me donations and stuff. Thank you so much. Such a funny story. The writing is so good, but sad that they, and like your grandfather and aunt, were not reconciled all those years for the two Ivans missing out on their lost friendship. It just takes one to make the apology and start the dialogue. But unfortunately, through the feeling of hurt and deep heartbreak, they can't speak at all. Forgiveness then is the key, as I'm sure we all know, but he had to go and say goose again and blew it. Yes, you know what I think, Deborah? I think at the end, you know, the very end of the story, when the narrator goes and finds them both in an empty church, and they are the only two there, apart from someone else, I think. But so they're both in an empty church, one in one corner, the other one in the other corner, and they don't speak. I think that what is happening here is that they go to the same places. It's a kind of a friendship. I think they have kind of forgiven each other. They probably go to the same places, but one will stand in the corner and the other one will stand in the opposite corner there. They want to be together, and that being physically in the same room is their way of communicating that they still really love each other in some sort of way, but it is the stubbornness that prevents them from actually communicating with words. They are communicating by being together, even if it is, you know, in the opposite corners of the room. It's a different kind of communication. the forgiveness part of it, I think that by this time they have forgiven each other. It goes to a bigger question of, I think, hold on, let me continue reading, because someone else brought, I will come back to this point. From Rita McDonagh 9686, I don't know whether I have pronounced your surname right. Coming from a legal background, I really enjoyed your reading of the letter with all the old-fashioned legal terms. Yeah, so funny. Your good humor made me laugh. Thanks so much. Thank you, Rita. Another one. Wonderful, so well read, and your laughter adds to the telling. Thank you. Travis 1365. Wonderful story. This is about the two Ivans. Wonderful story, beautifully read. Thank you. I did thoroughly enjoy it. I read Gogol's Dead Souls many years ago, which was also very good. I agree with you. This Russian literature is very important. It teaches us what life is, what the human person is, embedded within wonderful living characters. I sense in some way that Russia's soul is in some way humanity's soul. I have a question. How do you forgive someone who did something wrong when that person, perhaps through pride, will not concede that they did anything wrong? When we go to confession, we seek forgiveness, but we have to face and admit our sins. If we do not, how can we be forgiven? I understand that the confessional is an encounter with Christ, but is there a parallel here? I have had this experience with a family member for a year now. I do not want to draft my writ and attend the court. Our heroes let their squabble consume their lives. Very funny, but in the end it was sad. Poor fellows. Thank you again. Love those two videos. Yes. Okay, so this continues on Deborah's point about forgiveness. Okay. This is how I think about it. When you have been hurt deeply, someone killed your son, okay? Restitution, punishment for the criminal, all that, very well, but that does not clear anything. That doesn't heal the wound. The hole in your heart is still there. I think we agree with that. Now, how we may choose to just keep this hole in the heart, this resentment or this hatred, or they tell us, forgive. That is the only way you will heal. I don't think that is going to be enough, forgiveness, because first of all, it is difficult, isn't it? But even if you manage to forgive, you still feel that emptiness, that wrong, that, as I said in an earlier video, that crying out for justice in the heart. You still feel the hurt. Even when you forgive, you still feel the hurt. And I think, since you bring up religion here, that is perhaps what Christ said about loving your enemy. In other words, the most difficult transition is, okay, you have forgiven, you're trying very hard to forgive, okay? And time has passed and you have forgiven. But that most difficult transition of really healing is when you can say, I truly, truly, honestly, deeply in my heart, not pretending, I wish you the best in your life, and I wish that you will never have to suffer it. In an honest way, when you have crossed this bridge of saying what Christ said, love your enemy, which is so difficult, but when you have come to that point beyond forgiveness, when you can say, I love you, or if not that, I wish you the best. I will no longer feel any resentment of any kind towards you. I think that is when the healing comes. Very difficult. From Elsa Bretagne, okay. Thank you for bringing on the Russian literary classics. It takes me back to school lessons on Russian literature back in the USSR, and I do wish my teacher had had the same literary sense. Not that she didn't, it was different. I like the way you connect your personal life stories with narrative truths. It's at this point when the fictional becomes truthful and universal, coming as close as possible to the anima mundi, whatever that means, the life of the soul. I remain a faithful follower of your channel, thank you, but alas, an irregular spectator, mainly because of the lack of time, so do keep posting videos with descriptive headings, and I'll keep coming to listen to more stories and thoughts. On the importance of reading such stories for teens, what you're saying in this video reminded me a little bit of C.S. Lewis' essay, The Abolition of Man, or Reflections on Education with special reference to the teaching of English in the upper forms of school. Very much a prophetic essay given what's going on now in the education and world in general. As for dealing with the feeling of injustice and the hurtful scar it leaves, well, maybe it's just the way it is. We are supposed to get over it with time and never recover from it fully. The scar remains. C'est la vie. I think that you can overcome it, as I said, through that very, very difficult final step of actually loving your enemy, meaning wishing him well without any resentment. On power reaches always transient, I think is the last video. Also, Elsa, you says, thank you for sharing your reading of De la Barca's play. I've enjoyed the story. The kind of talks you're offering on your channel makes me think of an activity which was basically a friends get together in someone's place, usually the kitchen, and discussing all the hot topics over a hot cup of tea, philosophy, literature, politics, etc., habitually inexistent in the public media space as a relic of the Soviet-era censorship. I did not grow in the dictatorship years, but there was a tingling feeling of living dangerously about these meetings, and everybody was involved in this sort of pastime. It was never a gossip or a small talk, but really serious stuff. Lol. So next time, maybe a talk with a kettle and a cupboard in the background. I would have to change my my computer, which is like huge. It's like a television set, to the kitchen. I don't think I can do that. I don't think the cables will allow me to do that. But thank you very much for your comment again. Difference is that one of my students, a Russian student, told me once that in his grandfather's time during the Soviet era, that the people knew very well that they were being lied to, or they were not being told the whole truth. So when they watched the news, they would just put the news on, listen to the headlines, to what was going on in the world, as it were, and then just switch it off, because they knew that the rest of it was propaganda, and they would just switch it off. They just they just wanted to listen to the first few things to see what happened, and that was it. They wouldn't believe it. And that brings me back to our world today here in the West, where people still, many people, I think the majority, although it's becoming less and less, still believe what they are told by the mainstream media wholeheartedly. They don't doubt it. Anyway, Travis 1365 about the Life is a Dream video. Often dreams are very real. A reality can enter during sleep, a real experience, just as life is a real experience. When we wake, we are often relieved. It was just a dream. We can go on as before. But when we awake from the main dream, we will enter reality outside of space and time, essence. Then we shall see total victory or total ruin, terrifying. Yes, you obviously got the point of Lavarca's play. Christ is our King, His Holy Mother is our Queen. I pray for strength to prevail. God have mercy on us all. Mark Fisher 3626 again. Rod Sterling wrote the original Twilight Zone series to a formula. Some of the episodes were written by Buck Horton, who also wrote for the series Alfred Hitchcock Presents. That was famous, wasn't it? Yeah. The key is the surprise ending. You are presented with a situation that seems normal, but with some unexplainable incongruities. You are drawn into this reality for almost the entire story, and at the end, you are zoom out metaphorically. The reality is entirely different from what you were led to believe, and it all becomes clear, often dark. This is used to create not merely surprise, but shock. The series was in black and white and first aired on television in the early 60s. Thank you, Mark Fisher, again. Please keep them coming. Okay, I think I will, let me go back here. I think I will say goodbye for today. I'm thinking of other things to do for new videos. If you have any suggestions that you want me to cover, or books, or whatever it is, just keep your comments coming. Subscribe. Bye bye. Thank you for your company. Bye.